Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking more about Sharkbite, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the Runcam Nano HD and the Foxeer Digisight 2 Nano. These are the only two cameras that have been available for Sharkbite up to this point, and although I know we're all excited about that new Micro HDZero camera, I think these nano cameras are still really important for the system. If you're building something like a Whoop or a 2-inch micro, these are probably the only cameras that are going to fit in those types of builds. And because everybody's so excited about the new micro camera, I think even once it's released, it might be pretty hard to get a hold of for a while. So if you're looking to get into the system right now, one of these nano cameras might be your ticket to getting started. I know there's also been a lot of interest in that HDZero glass lens upgrade for the Runcam, and I've had a chance to get one of those and do some tests with it, so I'll also be showing you some comparisons with that upgrade to help you decide if it's something you would like to get. So let me go ahead and introduce the cameras, and then we'll jump into those comparisons. The Runcam Nano HD and Foxeer Digisight 2 Nano are both nano-sized HDZero cameras with standard 14 by 14 millimeter dimensions. Both cameras attach to the VTX using the same type of MIPI cable, and both cameras do include that cable. The Runcam is only compatible with the HDZero Sharkbite system, but the Foxeer additionally can be used in an analog mode with traditional analog VTXs. The Foxeer camera also includes a back cover to help keep the MIPI cable connected to the camera and to protect the electronics on the back of the camera. Both of these cameras cost around $50 US at the time of this video. So with these two cameras being as similar as they are in specs, it's really going to come down to functionality and image quality. And I decided to put both of these cameras to the test in a variety of situations to try and show you how they perform and how they compare. One thing that frustrates me sometimes about camera comparisons is that people will try to compare two models and they'll show you video clips that were taken in different environments or in different lighting conditions, and it makes it really hard to compare how those cameras actually perform. The lighting conditions make a big impact on how we perceive the quality of the camera, and so I really wanted to try to eliminate that variable in this testing. So for this video, I use these cameras to fly the same route in the same place at the same time of day with similar lighting. And then I repeated those tests at different times of the day to see how the camera performed across a variety of situations. So I did some tests at midday, at nighttime, and at golden hour to try and cover some of the common times that we fly and see how the cameras perform. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some side-by-side comparisons, and I'll tell you what I thought about these cameras as I was testing them. For this first comparison, I'm comparing the Foxeer and Runcam at midday. This type of lighting isn't particularly flattering for any camera, but it's definitely a common flying situation, so it's a good comparison for us to look at. Let me go ahead and note here that when I'm showing you the two cameras side by side, I'm cropping the sides off of each camera frame so that I can make them bigger on the screen and show you both of them together more easily. I'll include a few shots of each of the cameras by itself so you can judge what the field of view is, but when you see these side by side comparisons, that's not the full field of view of either camera. So as I watch the footage, the first thing I notice is that there's a pretty big difference in the colors of these cameras, and I definitely prefer the image from the Runcam. Now of course, you can adjust the settings of both cameras to tweak the colors, but even accounting for that, I feel like I enjoy the character of the Runcam image much more than that of the Foxeer. The colors are more saturated, and to me they feel more true to life. One thing I do notice in favor of the Foxeer is that I feel like it does better at letting me see into some of the shadowy areas. You'll notice that under trees and under the playground covering, you can see into those spots better with the Foxeer camera. Now, once I get into those spots with the Runcam, it brightens up enough for me to see, but I can imagine some flying situations where you might prefer that visibility that you get with the Foxeer. I think it's really all related to the overall difference in these images. The Runcam is more contrasty, which makes for a more visually pleasing image, but tends to make those dark areas appear very dark. So speaking of dark areas, let's take a look at some night footage. This is something I haven't seen much in HDZero camera videos, but I personally put a lot of value on being able to fly at night, so it's something that I cared a lot about for this comparison. Right away, I'll say I was impressed I could see anything with either of these cameras in the dark. I feel like that probably wasn't a major design consideration for either camera, and it was a pleasant surprise that both of these cameras are at least passable in the dark. In the well-lit areas, I think I'd give the edge to the Runcam just because the colors appear a bit more pleasing to me than the Foxeer, but I think the Foxeer does take the lead a bit in the darker spots. That same lack of contrast in the image is probably helping it here, and I do feel like I can see a bit better with the Foxeer camera. The Runcam does have a setting for day and night mode, and I made sure it was set on auto for this test. You can see it switch over when it transitions from a brighter area to a really dark area, and that night mode does help the visibility a bit. I'll also say that both of these images appeared brighter in my goggles than what you see in the DVR footage, so depending on your goggles, you're likely to have better results than what you're seeing on the screen. Overall, for night flying, I think my conclusion is that both cameras are acceptable, but the Foxeer gets a slight edge for visibility in really dark areas. I have a few more comparisons to show you, but for this next one, we're going to set the Foxeer camera aside for a moment, and we're going to take a look at that HDZero glass lens upgrade for the Runcam. This is an upgrade you can buy from the HDZero store, and it just screws into the camera body. You might be familiar with some of the DIY lens upgrades people have done, where they've 3D printed a case and used a larger lens in the camera, and this upgrade is much simpler than that. You don't have to 3D print anything, you can just attach the lens directly to the camera. Now, one thing I will say is that you have to focus that lens by screwing it in, and there's a little lock ring that you screw down to secure it once you set the focus. The actual process of setting that focus is really easy, but one thing I found difficult was getting it set exactly the way I wanted. It's the kind of thing where you'll set the focus and think you're happy with it, but then you start to question yourself and wonder if it's just a little bit off, and you go back and adjust it, and it's just a minor annoyance. It's not a deal breaker for the lens, but just be aware that you're gonna have to spend a little bit of time fiddling with it to get the focus exactly the way you want. But the whole point of that upgrade is to improve the image quality, so now let's take a look at a comparison between the regular Runcam versus the Runcam with this glass lens. When I first flew with the glass lens, I think I was maybe a little underwhelmed because it wasn't a radical change in the appearance of the image, and I think that's an important point to make about this upgrade. It's not going to change the core characteristics of the Runcam image, so if you don't like the image from the camera to begin with, I don't think the glass lens will change your mind. But what I did start to notice as I flew with it more, and what I really noticed when I looked at the footage on a larger screen, is that the glass lens really cleans up the image and gives more apparent resolution. It almost looks less sharp than the default lens, but in a way that looks more real and is more pleasing to the eye. If you notice the flashes or strobing that happen occasionally in the glass lens footage, that isn't just a DVR artifact, and I was seeing that on my goggles. I'm not too sure what's going on there. I don't know if it's a firmware bug or something with the camera's auto exposure algorithm, but it can be a little annoying in certain conditions. I didn't really notice this when I was flying at other times of the day, but it was pretty apparent in that midday footage. If you're watching this video and you know what's going on there, please let me know, because I really would like to figure out what's happening with that. For the last comparison, I wanted to show you both of these cameras in their best possible light so you can judge what they're capable of in ideal conditions. I did this comparison at golden hour, which is the time right before sunset when the sun is casting long shadows and the light has a more golden appearance. This is generally seen as the best time to take photos, and I thought it'd be fun to compare the cameras in an environment when they can both perform really well. So it's no surprise that both of the images look really good here. I think I'd still pick the Runcam because the colors still look best to me, but the Foxeer's putting up a good show here, and I'd feel perfectly fine with the Foxeer image in this situation. And I have to say that footage like this is why I think it's silly when people say Sharkbite is barely better than analog. I think this shows that the system can really give you some great image quality when you're in the right circumstances. I mean, it's not GoPro quality, but I think this footage looks really good. So now that you've seen these comparisons and hopefully formed some of your own opinions, I'll give you my overall thoughts. I don't think it'll be that much of a surprise for me to say that I definitely preferred the Runcam over the Foxeer. I felt like the colors were better, and it just seemed like it had a more pleasing image to me. I might feel differently if the Foxeer was cheaper because it still looks pretty good. It's definitely better than analog, and in some of the cases the image looked really good, but it just can't measure up to the Runcam. You might prefer the Foxeer if you do a lot of flying in dark places or at night, but I think for most cases you should probably stick with the Runcam. I also ran into a couple of weird issues with the Foxeer camera during testing. At one point the camera somehow got stuck into a black and white mode, and it took me a long time to figure out how to fix that because the setting's actually in a hidden menu that's not documented very clearly. So that was kind of a weird thing. I don't even know how that setting got set to begin with, but it was pretty strange. I also felt like it was a little weird that the Foxeer camera supports analog video. I don't think that's something that most people buying the camera are going to take advantage of, and it just kind of introduces an extra point of failure into the system. Some users have reported that the camera has just switched itself into analog mode without them knowing, and then they have to switch it back before they can use it with HDZero. So it's this extra troubleshooting step that you have to consider when you're dealing with that camera. I do think that they've removed that analog functionality from the newest revision of the Digisight camera, so hopefully they're learning here, but it was just kind of a weird thing to have included in the first place. I'm sorry, Foxeer, I generally really like your cameras, but the Digisight 2 Nano just really isn't doing it for me. I also have some thoughts on that HDZero glass lens upgrade for the Runcam. Now, I'm glad they released this upgrade, and I think it shows us that these cameras can be better than we thought they were when they were first released. And if you want to squeeze every last bit of image quality out of your camera, you should definitely get the upgrade. But I don't feel like it drastically changes the image quality of the camera, and it definitely doesn't change the core characteristics of the image. So if you're looking at your Runcam and you're just really not happy with anything about the image, I don't think the glass lens will change your mind. That said, I'm pretty happy with the upgrade. I'm glad I put it on my camera, so you'll just have to decide if that level of improvement is worth it to you. I also want to acknowledge that some of you guys might have a problem with my testing. You might feel like I didn't set these cameras properly, or I didn't test some variable correctly, and the truth is, it's really hard to test these cameras in a scientific way, especially because both cameras have a lot of settings that you can change to adjust the image. I'm going to go ahead and show you the settings that I use for both of the cameras, so pause the video here if you want to see that. Ultimately, image quality is pretty subjective, and I tried to test these cameras in a way that looked best to me and my goggles, and I tried to do it as fairly as possible. But if you disagree with something I did, if you want me to try some different settings or test the cameras in a different environment, just comment below and let me know what you want me to try. I'd be happy to give it a shot. There's still a lot to learn about these cameras beyond what you're seeing here. But I hope this video gives you an idea of how these cameras compare and helps you decide which one you want to use for your next Sharkbite build. And if you've had your eye on that HDZero glass lens upgrade, hopefully this gives you an idea of whether that's something you want to buy or not. So I think that covers my thoughts on these cameras. I hope you guys found this useful, and if you did enjoy this content, I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing some new Sharkbite videos coming up. I'm working on a review of the system as a whole, and I'm also working on getting a hold of one of those new micro HDZero cameras so that I can compare that to the cameras you saw in this video. So stay tuned for those things. As always, let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts or questions on what you saw here. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.